It's May now. Soon enough, it'll be June 2010. And this year, it'll be memorable. For this year in June, the so-called leaders, finance ministers, and central bank governors of the 20 most powerful countries in the world will gather here in Toronto to meet, to strategize, to further their exploitative ideologies that benefit them and the corporations they serve, to further the actions and inactions that have trashed the planet and brought us to the brink of catastrophic climate change, to further policies that have created an unprecedented gap between the rich and the poor, policies that have fueled unending imperialist wars of aggression. They will try to promote and push through measures that systematically displace, starve, and enslave the majority of the world's people, measures that reduce human beings and the natural world to commodities they can buy, sell, trade, and dispose. This year in June, the so-called leaders of the 20 most powerful countries will attempt to push around our communities here in Toronto. And this year in June, we will stop them.
And all races, getting down to rhythms of art paces. Couldn't catch these beats if you rap the Star David with guns akimbo, spraying running through Ramallah. Hard like a 13 and a half step drummer. Poor peoples is fed up like bounty killer.
The G8 meeting will take place in Huntsville, Ontario on June 25th, followed by the G20 summit in Toronto on June 26th and 27th. In the aftermath of the so-called economic crisis, these meetings are an attempt to fix capitalism, a broken system that benefits few and marginalizes many. In direct opposition and with a will to transform, people across Turtle Island are organizing community-based days of action leading up to and during the G8 G20 summits. These days of action will be led by Indigenous peoples, women, queer and trans people, people of color, disabled people, the poor, and the working class. The theme for the 2010 G20 summit is Recovery and New Beginnings, and this time, the people will define the new beginnings. Grounded in our struggles, deepening our local and global connections, we will write our own scripts.
The G20 summit will create checkpoints across the city. It'll create borders that divide people and show the true face of global apartheid. The intense militarization that Toronto will see in a few days in June are just a glimpse of the reality that millions of people across this planet are forced to live with daily. Racist border controls treat migrants like exploitable commodities to be used and abused for their labor for the profits of corporations.
And we are here to say that our bodies are not to be exploited. Our bodies are not and never will be part of the power-monger society, the small elite society of the G20. And
the agenda of the G8 and G20 flies in the face of the needs of poor people throughout this planet and is going to be translated into an intensification of social cutbacks and austerity that's going to be imposed massively on poor communities. It's in some ways a launching pad for a decade of vicious austerity, and we believe a decade of resistance.
And we're mobilizing around the G20 because we want to highlight the fact that Canada is a leader globally in the international mining industry. 75% of the world's mining and exploration companies are based here, and there's a very obvious critique when you look at the actual operations on the ground of how these mining companies are negatively impacting communities.
We really want to make sure that Stephen Harper does not hijack the messages around gender justice with his pretensions to be supporting maternal and child health. We need people to understand the truth about the Harper government and international governments.
And up until this point, since the early 1400s to now, I don't see peace, I don't see friendship, and I don't see respect. So when the G20 does come in, I think it's really important for the public to know that we will be joining forces, and we'll be joining forces in terms of the awareness. We'll be walking together in terms of the red, the white, the black, and the yellow. And then when that does come, then you'll see those voices in terms of what we understand as Indigenous people, of why our teachings talk about the four colors and how we will work together.
We're fighting the G8 and G20 this year as part of our campaign because it represents the richest people in the world and their governments, including Canada's, which keeps disabled people segregated socially, physically, and economically. Canada's government must pass accessibility legislation that means something now, which makes public infrastructure and buildings accessible.
In June, we refuse to sit idly by while a handful of rich men in suits come to our city and take it over. We refuse to sit by and watch them in their ivory towers make decisions about the things that impact our lives. We'll be taking to the streets, we'll be shutting them down, and we'll be showing them our power.
And people are going to see that here in this country too, people are mobilising to fight back and resist. I have a hope that people are going to turn on their TV sets in Athens and see people demonstrating on the streets of Toronto against the same agenda that they're fighting.
And so we ally ourselves so that communities can have a platform within Canada to fight back.
We gotta fight the fuck back. If we're gonna beat these people, we have to make it so there's no city that's safe for them to meet in the entire world.